This conference will now be recorded.
This is the Finance Committee of Council. It's 6:48, Tuesday, the 15th. And we're doing a follow-up on the budget, which is wait a minute. I'm sorry. It's 128, I believe, correct? Which is an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. And so as of last Tuesday, we didn't have any actual amendments except for the amendments that Carrie had been talking about, and there were some questions from Mr. Limpert about funding some of the funds. And then since then, Mr. Glassburn has sent a worksheet. I always admire your energy, Chris. Carrie and the administration have taken this very seriously. They've been going over this and discussing it. And Carrie, do you want to address these? You want to go down? You want to handle that?
Yes. Well, I mean, the mayor will handle some of it too, and the other directors. But first, let me take a step back because just so we remember, the debt, the bond.
Oh, no.
Issue and the note repayment and the two capital project funds were part of my amendment. Part of the amendment that we had talked about. So that's included in there. And then if you recall that the expenditures for the hospitalization and workers' comp fund were not entered in the detail. So we had to enter those. So we did that. That's in the, we also determined that while we were looking at benefits, the life insurance, AFSCME, clerical tech, and service, they have it as a benefit. They don't contribute anything to it. So theirs was booked in the salary projection, but the non-bargaining, police, fire, and the other dispatch, I believe, and corrections, they were not, it was not booked through the salary projection. So we had to make an amendment to include life insurance. And then we had talked about the $33,000 reduction for the TAC, the station alerting system that they had already purchased, and it was not supposed to be in this year's budget. And the $7,500, the law director had said we could reduce his outside services for that. And as we were going through some of the amendments, we started thinking about that. We were talking about what do we know what the census impact is yet? And then we said, oh my gosh, we have to redistrict in 2021. So there was no money in there in council's budget, and we didn't think of it either. So we need to put the 7,500. It was 5,000 last time, which was 10 years ago. So we're hoping the 7,500 can cover that for that. So, and then the last thing, which I was going to wait until January when we knew final carryover balances and what healthcare was going to be. We needed to fund the job creation and retention grants. Last year it was 185,000, and in 2021 we're projecting 160,000, 40,000 for the creation grant for commute air, and we're estimating 120 for Moen. And it's not based on net profit or anything, it's based on W-2 wages in those areas. So and they've both stayed pretty constant. And so those are the items that are in the amendment that we had talked about previously, and some additional ones that the administration had identified that we needed. And so then I would like to go and start with the list and discuss the fund items. And while the administration, we felt like we always wanted to fund the separation pay and the 27th pay, and we intended to do that in the final version next year of once we knew, like I said, the carryover and such. And so council wanted it funded in the temporary, so we said, well, we want it funded too, so we're going to put those back. The safety service director issue, 100% of the wages were booked in service director and benefits. So we split it back to the way it's been traditionally budgeted, for 50% in service and 50% in safety director, so that when the mayor hires someone, they will that will be utilized. The deer management, I know that we talked about it. Mayor, do you recall that Renee and Becky had discussed it with, and they were getting information from South Euclid on the deer management issue, even though it's a zero budget impact?
Yeah, I think this is such a new program. We're struggling with getting information, but it's certainly something we'll get information on this year and maybe discuss in next year's budget.
Okay. And then we felt for the economic development proposal to take 25,000 of the fund, even though I didn't quite understand the spreadsheet impact, but the essence was to create new funds for grants for businesses out of the economic development fund, rather than utilizing the economic development consultant. And we discussed it and felt that, do you want to take this, Kim? Or
I can take it.
okay, great.
Some observations we had were that given the size of our business community, we were concerned that 25,000 wouldn't stretch very far, and that we'd be dipping into money that we'd need for our expert consulting. There's also a staffing capacity where we're down in planning in terms of staff. So trying to get a new program off the ground with the infrastructure. We had talked about it during the CARES Act when those funds were available and the potential use of those funds for business, but felt that potentially that could have been a drop in the bucket for what businesses may need. So I think we're, at this point, we're reluctant to shift those funds over, feeling that the impact on the business community might not be as robust as we might want, excuse me, for 25,000. Also acknowledging that unlike cities like Lakewood that have like hundreds of thousands of dollars in their economic development fund, ours is not funded well. It's funded by some cell tower revenues, and Carrie, I'm not sure what the other resource is, but I think it doesn't make much easier, so we'd rapidly drain that account. So those were our concerns. So we prefer to leave the funding as it is presently and continue to explore options, but not make a change at this point.
Right. Okay, and then while we're on it, the youth and family services, the outdoor meeting area, that was already in the budget, so we don't know why we felt that we had to add 2,500. It's already in our 2021 budget. And we talked about the separation pay. I did not feel strongly that we needed to fund the casualty loss fund. It's not a reserve that we fund regularly. We sort of take a look at it and fund it as needed. A lot of the funds that go in and out of there are for insurance claims for people who've damaged our property. And so that pays for the expenses. Or if we have like a major deductible, like for example, the flooding lawsuit, we had to pay, we have like a $25 $5,000 deductible that we have to pay, and then everything else is covered. So we felt that that fund is okay, and there's not a formal funding plan that we have for that. We kind of just take a look at it and see where it's going, and it's usually, like I said, small dollars like that. And then the cemeteries for the ground, for the repair and maintenance for $2,500. There is money in grounds maintenance in forestry for things like the bike path, cemetery, fencing, fencing that's on city grounds. And it's only like $10,000 in total in that fund, in that line item. But we feel that the $2,500 is not, Bella disagrees with it completely too, I might add, as she's barking. The $2,500 is really not enough to address what we feel like council, and we agree that there could be a cemetery program, but there's a lot of issues with the cemetery program, and the thinking about repairing and replacing old markers, and also that there are other funding opportunities for that might be grant related if they're veterans, maybe veteran related. So we felt that at this time, the $2,500 is not an effective increase into what really it would cost to do the program. And so we felt that we would look to council and work through the Landmarks Commission regarding maybe a more thorough plan for dealing with our cemeteries. So we did not put that in the amendment. The outside counsel, we discussed this, and I know that a couple of council people wanted to put it in outside counsel for the allocation for council to utilize their own outside counsel. But it does need to go for redistricting, and there are the law, we don't have any authority, council doesn't have authority to hire its own attorney. In our charter, the attorneys are Michael Guerrero, or the law director, only has the authority to hire attorneys to represent the city, even if there's in conflicts. He makes that determination and hires the outside counsel. That's why it's in his line item. Then also, recreation. That was another issue that council had asked to budget as if the pandemic was restrictive to 7/1. And we didn't feel that this was a very productive method of for the recreation center, and they did a very good job of moving, like looking at projects and moving them out as they weren't getting done, and moving the expenses accordingly, and we adjusted the budget several times during that. But if things are going better and each program has to be added to a transfer ordinance, it just wouldn't be administratively effective to be able to move programs forward.
Carrie,
yes.
I think the mayor wanted to say something about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a good idea.
I'll help you out there. So yeah, with rec programs, a lot of the times these things take a while. So like we're working on, let's just say the summer camp program. Like let's say in March or April, we're getting counselors for that. If we don't have a budget for that, that makes it tough to plan for. However, the rec center did a great job. I think they balanced their budget, right? Is that correct? Okay. So like, we don't know whether we're going to have a summer camp program, but we're going to plan for it. And if we don't, then we won't hire those people. But we want the budget in place so we can work on it. Things like that.
The other, Mr. Chairman, is that in 2020, I keep calling it last year. I guess I'm hopeful. In 2020, we were closed for a couple months completely, and then the ice was down too. So the revenue stream was worse than we expect it to be for this year, even if if the programs don't happen. The ice they're going to continue to work with the requirements of the CDC and whoever else is in charge to keep programs running as best as we can. And that will help our fund as well with the ice, because that's a money creator for us. Let me see, where am I at? Okay. We talked about the separation pay. And then the hotel motel fund for the police cruisers. I don't know, it said that you thought that there were none in there, but there are 2 in the hotel motel fund with all the fixings, all the wrap, the watch guard, servers, computers, everything that they need to roll these cars out. And both the fleet manager and the police chief felt that 2 would be fine, and they didn't feel that they were shorted. I'm sorry, my dog just took my agenda and ran into the other room. I apologize. Anyway, so we feel that 2 are adequate for what we need. And then the salt truck and the jet vac truck. Mayor, would you like to address those?
Mr. Chairman, if I can. Yeah, I think the vac truck is the single most important piece of equipment we're buying. When we were out this summer in Bretton Ridge and Park Ridge, the way it would work is we have the 2. So, okay, you have the one vac truck in sanitary that's constantly out there doing the sanitary lines every 5 years. They're getting through the system. We need to be more efficient in getting through the system in storm. And so they would have the orange truck doing catch basins and staying ahead of the white truck, and the white truck would be doing the laterals. And then, you know, let's say there was a problem somewhere, then the orange truck would go and take care of that problem. And then the white truck would catch up, the white vac truck. So, but we also had a ton of problems just in probably the summer months that we were doing Bretton Ridge and Pine Ridge. We had a lot of blowouts, a lot of problems. So even our newer truck, the white truck, which is a hand-me-down from wastewater, is still a problem issue. Like I would guess that we want to get a new vac truck in, and maybe even think about a new one in a few years, or maybe we get the one handed down from sanitary. So I feel the vac truck is one of the most important things, especially with, you know, flooding issues being important.
The other thing,
Carrie, didn't the mayor, I'm sorry, didn't Tony, was it Tony saying that truck was pretty inadequate for actually doing storm sewers? And I had attended a meeting with the mayor and the storm crew this summer, just as they were entering Bretton Ridge. They'd finished Park Ridge, and that was a big part of the discussion, was the fact that they had to make multiple trips. I guess it doesn't hold enough stuff that's coming out of these of the storm sewers. I believe that was part of the discussion we had at the time, so we were wasting man hours running this thing back and forth. The truck is made to clean out sanitary lines, which are smaller, and they don't get the big pieces of garbage in the sanitary lines, because the only thing that goes into sanitary is what you can flush down the toilet. But the storm sewers fill up with all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of debris and bricks and all kinds of things in our storm sewers that the truck made for that would be able to get out. Does that sound right? That would sound what I took away from that meeting at the time. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Mr. Chairman,
Here,
additionally, Yeah, the other item regarding that is that I think that some council people had mentioned that, oh, well, once they're caught up, they're not going to, like, the truck is just going to sit there. And that's not the case. This is a storm sewer maintenance plan. And they will, well, just like the sanitary sewer has 4 years to get through the city, the sanitary or the storm sewer plan's the same thing. And when they have the one truck working that plan with the camera, they actually have the second truck going out on other calls if there are calls to people's homes or a ditch problem or what have you, or they have them, it even works better when that one is in front of them cleaning the catch basins out so that then they are working more effectively, and then they can keep going and doing it with just the camera truck and the storm jet vac if someone gets called out on another call, and they don't have to shut everything down and go to that call and then leave that plan. And once they complete that plan, they plan on then they're doing a lot of documentation and cameraing, which had not been done before, so that they are identifying problem areas. They've really found some things where, like the piping in some areas doesn't like connect. It's broken and severed, and maybe that's why they're having some problems. So I mean, it's really a good program. They're documenting all that, and then they plan on doing it again, and it's an ongoing thing. So it's not, that truck is not going to be just sitting there. And that's the other reason why they feel that 2 are effective. And the 1 is like the tank is collapsing. Like they had to build these bars in it so that it didn't implode on itself. And the other, with the storm sewer jet vac, it's a safer way to clean out the catch basins. They don't have to, because it's bigger suction, and because it's used to sucking up bigger pipes than what the sanitary is. It can go down, and they can bring it, and it's mobile. They can bring it down into the sanitary, so they don't have to go down into the confined space with the hose. The hose can go down there, and they don't have to do that, and it's safer for them. So there are a lot of reasons why that they felt that this was their number 1 priority. And on the salt truck, they want a salt truck, but when asked to prioritize their needs, the 3 things they said they had to have or really wanted was the jet vac, the street sweeper, because they feel the street sweeper will also help in keeping storm channels clean, because it's actually a much improved over the ancient one that we have. And also the trailer and mini Kubota or something that the road crew really wanted, so that the storm crew could have one in them. And so those are the things that they said that they were important. So we did not add that to our amendment because we felt that we had already prioritized those. And so that's where it stands. Mr. Schuman, Ms. Heeman was raising her hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my head up. Go ahead, carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gosh, it sounds like an environmental committee meeting, not a budget meeting. But really, truly, if these were such important kinds of things that we needed for a long time, I, respectfully submit that we should have been made aware, because they're very large purchases. When the first one was purchased, we were told it would be a shared item. I realize it's not convenient now, but Mr. Schuman, I think that such an important meeting for you to have attended, perhaps someone from environmental should have been there to understand, the gravity and the expense and the whole process that now we're being asked to fund. So I still think that we need to reconsider that. I'm not in favor of purchasing a second one this year. but thank you.
It was just myself and the mayor and the guys from the storm crew and Mike Bosa, and I think Greg Peters was there from sanitary. I appreciate what you're saying,
that
but
would be my
they were
point,
working
Mr.
in my neighborhoods, Mary Ellen. They were in my
They were in
neighborhoods.
your ward.
Yeah,
I
it was in my-
understand, and I do, but perhaps you could have given us a report or someone could have reported out on that to us. That's all. Thank you.
It was very impromptu on my end. I just happened to be in the neighborhood. So, thanks.
Okay, and then the emergency assistance and youth and family service that doubles miscellaneous discretionary. I think there might have been some misunderstanding as to what that discretionary expensing, the miscellaneous discretionary expense. Those are funds that are donated and they're either restricted for a specific program that the Youth and Family Services provides, or it's just for the whatever they think the division head thinks that they need. So it's not restricted. So it goes into the discretionary funding. So then they can, move it to where they feel it's most effective. So it's fun. All those funds that are expended are from what's been donated to that. So it can only be allocated to either restricted or non-restricted. So we didn't feel that there needed to be an increase because there was no additional donations that were going in there that were for that purpose. And their donations have been actually up significantly this year. I think that donate button really was a good idea. And then we talked about the separation pay. So those are the items that are included, and the ones that we discussed were not included was the economic development, the patio for youth and family. It's already in the budget, so it didn't need to be amended. The casualty loss, we felt that for right now that amount was adequate, and we always keep an eye on it, and if there's a major claim coming through, we will adjust as needed. The outside counsel for law or for counsel, but we did put it in outside services for the redistricting expenses that usually come out of council. The recreation center, we kept it at their budget, knowing that as things evolve, we will be making adjustments. And there are 2 police cruisers. We felt that was good in a tough economic year. Remember, they're funded out of the hotel motel, and those funds have been hit during this pandemic. And the salt truck is not in there, and the jetback truck is still in there. We did not amend it to take it out. And the miscellaneous discretionary is not necessary because there are no additional donations to that effect. So I tried to summarize those for you, but yet still give you, that we did discuss them in great length.
Thank you, Carrie. Let's just questions from committee. Mr. Broussard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really just a couple of comments more than questions. So when we met last week, the direction that you gave as the chair was that you had asked any council member who was thinking about any amendments to this temporary budget to get them in by Thursday at noon. And so here we are today meeting as a finance committee, and these are the first I'm hearing about it. So a simple courtesy to anybody who submitted proposed amendments would have been nice to see that ahead of this meeting. So that's one comment. The other comment is I'm in total agreement with Mr. Schuman about the need for a vac truck. If you've not cleaned out neighbors' houses and other residents of your ward, a foot of sanitary and stormwater mixed together, while your basement is still sitting with water in it, waiting to be cleaned out, then I would advise you to rethink your position on the need for a vac truck. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I just want, Mr. Broussard, that could have been my bad. The clerk of council was out of town, and then my assistant was out of town, and I didn't know that you weren't in the initial discussion with the other council people. So I figured that you guys all saw that, and that's why I didn't forward it to anybody, so I apologize.
This wasn't really a discussion either. I mean, we didn't have an illegal meeting or anything. This was Mr. Glassburn was good enough to put together a list of talking points, whatever, on a nice spreadsheet, and I appreciate it. And there wasn't really a lot of back and forth or anything about it. So, and I didn't send it to you either, Lou. I assumed that you got it, so I apologize too. Okay, Mr. Kelly, you got any questions or comments or anything? Okay. Members of council? Anybody? President Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Kopfer, thank you for correcting me in saying that there was money set aside for the outdoor patio for the Youth and Family Services Division. Could you please tell me what line item that was in? Because I must have misunderstood during our budget meetings on Saturday what was said about that.
Mr. Chair,
your mic's up. Go ahead, Kim. Do you want to respond to that?
I don't have the specific line item, but the detailed note said meeting furniture, and there's $1,200 included. I believe is in the general fund youth and family area.
I have it in my report too, so it must have been mentioned to us at some point.
1,200.
I didn't have a dollar figure in my report, but it was mentioned that they were asking to do that, and it was budgeted for it. So,
thank you. If Director Kopfer, if you get a chance, if you could just send a quick email with that line item number, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm looking right now, Madam President.
Thank you.
you have anything else, Nicole? You good? Nicole?
For now, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glassburn?
We can't hear you, Mr. Glassburn.
Okay, sorry about that. Came unplugged. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'll try to go through these one at a time. So the first topic of the recreation budget. I think it's pretty, the way I interpreted the budget setup as of right now is it's more or less mirroring 2019, the normal operation of the department for the entire year. We know that that's not going to be the case, at least through the spring. Maybe July 1st is not the correct date. Maybe it should be June 1st. I think that's fine for us to have that discussion. What I'm concerned about, and I think others may be concerned about, is if we just give the blanket authority to move forward, is there a positive or negative impact to the general fund to those activities not occurring? Because if there's funds available, we'd like to know. If it's going to cost money, we'd also like to know. So that's the genesis of that request. I doubt that the director is going to go, outspend their income by $500,000 or some large amount. I just, don't know what that impact is.
Karen, you want to?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Glassburn, I understand what you're asking, and I guess I'm saying that if the ice was down and they were actually closed for 2 months last year, they still did not need any direct assistance, which we were concerned about originally and throughout the year. And that's why we kept a close eye on their budget, and they were very good of, as programs were not getting done, we were taking the revenue and the expense out to make sure that they were still within their own fund. So I understand your concern, and it was my concern as well. But on the upside, when you're thinking about administering, it's hard to administer when you need to be acting. And sometimes we sign up all the people. That's why there were all the refunds. We sign up the people like the program's happening. We schedule the rooms. We do this. And then if it doesn't, then they have to back it all out. And so to sit there and say, okay, it's out. Okay, we're going to add it. And then, oh, we got to take it away because something else happened. It's not really effective use of their time. And they are very good. And I think that you can attest, we amended their budget several times to reduce all expenditures and revenues so that they were still on target to not need resources from the general fund. So I hope that you'll allow us to be able to administer the way we think will work best, and recognizing that we agree, we're watching very closely as things change to adjust the appropriations as necessary to avoid any big problems at the end of the year.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I guess maybe, and this will be the last on this point. I mean, our membership's down 20%, 50%. I mean, there are some fixed items I would think we would have some read on that aren't just the same as 2019. And to the extent that that matters, I mean, if just the answer is it's going to be balanced no matter what, I guess that's the answer. But it just seems like there has to be a little bit better of an insight than just mirroring a full year of operation. So the next point, Mr. Chair, was the safety director. There were two options listed, one that provided essentially what the administration chose, which was going back to the dual model, or a model for a part-time safety director and a reduced salary service director. If that's the way council wants to go, that's fine. I don't object to either way. I think the administration should have the flexibility to, as long as they're fulfilling the mandate the council's put out, to set that up how they want. I
agree with you there.
So just wanted to mention that. Next was the question of the police cruisers. So it appears from our legislation tonight that a single cruiser is somewhere on the order of $65,000, and so that's coming up there. In the chief's information that he provided, he indicated that the two cruiser, and Mr. Kelly can jump in if he would like at any point, but this was a concern he brought to me, but the two cruisers were leading to the department falling behind in its replacement schedule. And so that was the genesis, I believe, for this, to add the third. That's one of the higher dollar items that were on the list. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want me to pause for responses or keep rolling, or however you want to.
Mr. Kelly, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, my question on that is $65,000 for a cruiser that is complete with all the goodies added to it, correct? So speaking with the police chief, he said that the cruisers are about 33,000 to purchase and another $8,000 to $10,000 to outfit. In the information that he gave me, I'm wondering where the discrepancy is between those two numbers, if anybody's got an answer to that.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair,
two things, just before I lose this page. On page 115 of the detailed budget, expenditure budget, is where the meeting furniture and dirt and stone are in for youth and family services. Then if we go to the hotel motel fund, there is 134,500 on page 171 of the budget detail. And this is what we based it on. There's 120, 100, and then 2 in-car video systems at 6,250, 120, and then 12, and then another 2 for the vehicle wraps. That's where I based it off of. So, and I went over these numbers with the police chief, and the 134.5 was sufficient. He was estimating because he did say a lower number, but when we started looking at it, it is the 134,500. There's 5 more in-car video systems in this plan because they're trying to replace to get to the new, whatever that new system is that they're using. So they are replacing more than one. So that's the difference. And
it's the WatchGuard system is what it's called.
right. And the in-car video systems are antiquated, and I think there's something about the version of that software working on some of the older in-car video systems. And that's why I think they're having to add 5 more than just the new cars.
And Carrie, you spoke to the chief, and the chief is satisfied with 2 cars.
Yes, and so is the fleet manager. I mean, we don't always get 3. Sometimes we get 2, sometimes we've gotten 4. We've gotten 3. It's kind of we look at what we have, what's in dire need, and there's also some downplay in it where there might be some vehicles that need replacing in the outside of the police that usually come from police cars being replaced. So they felt strongly that 2 was fine in a precarious budget year.
Mr. Chair, if it's fine, I don't want to belabor this point, but what's the appropriate number should council decide? That would be a rough number, 65, 70,000, based off of the 2 that.
It's 2 for 134,500. So.
Okay, so 67.5.
67,250.
67,250. Okay. On the deer management, thank you for moving that forward. On the salt truck question, again, if another person would like to speak to it, that talked to me about it. Speaking for myself only, that's one of those things that's a long-term equipment piece that we continuously need to do. And so if there are things we're going to stretch without, if residents aren't able to get out of their homes, the cost of that is to the residents is far more than to the cost of the benefit of stretching out the expense. So, perhaps, using a rainy day funds is not the time for that, but it's pretty close to raining if it's not right now. And so, given this is a long-term issue, it seemed to be that it should stay in, and if we have to borrow for it, we have to borrow for it. But I guess the jet vac truck question will determine whether we move ahead with that. Councilwoman Heeman, did you want to add anything on the jet vac truck before I would address it?
Ms. Heeman,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
I don't mean to usurp you, Mr. Chair.
That's all right. That's fine, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think, yes, that we could actually purchase the jetback truck the following year, utilize the one that, we were supposed to be sharing anyway. It's a pretty hefty item. And then in addition to the jetback truck, you're talking about another piece of equipment. So a combined amount of, you're getting close to $1 million for just, that one purpose. And in fact, we could look at the ambulance, the rescue squad, and or the police cars, the salt truck, and look at the whole. And I do think that we could put off the jetback for another year. We were told it was going to be shared, and I stress that point because we're only a year in, and I realize, Mayor, it's important and near and dear to you, but the budget is really undetermined at this point, and we continue to lose businesses at a rate of about one per week. So I think these $1 million, items really need to be cut back. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, let me just, I don't know where you're getting the idea that this is going to be shared between sanitary and storm. That's just not the case. It never was the case. I mean, we are mandated by the EPA to provide a vac truck and constantly be in our system and get through it in 5 years. That's a mandate by the EPA. In a pinch, if we need it for a second or a day or whatever, yeah, they'll be there to help out. But by no means was that ever meant to be shared. And like I said, we're not in very good shape in storm with what we have. Again, what we have is a hand-me-down from sanitary. It's time to step up and have better equipment in storm. That's our biggest issue right now, and this is the budget to take care of it.
All right, Mr. Glassburn, you want to continue?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the economic development question, the intention on the spreadsheet, and this was my idea, was to, it appeared that we had about 22,000 for the consultant, was to take 15,000 from the consultant, still leaving some, but just a lesser amount, and then adding 10,000 to create some form of business grants. It seems to be that while we wait on Washington to do the right thing, that the next couple months are going to be the big time to determine whether businesses survive or not. And as Councilwoman Heeman noted, we've been losing them about once a week. If we have the ability to sustain a business, in the next couple months while Congress gets its act together, I think that's as good of a thing as we could do at this point. Avon Lake, was the cover of the Westlife, doing a similar effort. We've seen the county and other cities do this. What the appropriate amount is, I'd love to find more to put there. But, I just don't know where else we would come up with enough funds. So that was the idea of that, that proposal. As to,
Mr.
yes.
Glassburn, so, the problem I have with that is you're talking $15,000. That's not going to sustain anybody for any period of time. I mean, it's really, it's I get it, and I would like to be doing something too. I'm concerned that the timing might not be right here because the dust hasn't even settled yet. I think what we may want to do in the future is do some kind of tax credits to encourage businesses to open in North Olmsted after all of the dust settles, after all this nonsense is over, as we come out of this. I don't think you're going to save anybody with 15 grand. That's not going to pay anybody's salary. That's not going to, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to hand $15,000 to one of the restaurants that's going out of business? It's not going to do any good. I mean, I hate to be blunt, but that's how I see it. Now, if you want to encourage investment in the future, I think, you know, there's definitely some room for us to work together on that and do something. Certainly we can forego future taxes or something to encourage, just like we do already with the through the economic development plans that we have now. But I just like 15. What's it going to do? What's $15,000 going to do? My own business, I got a loan from the Fed for $8,000. I mean, and that didn't do me any good. You know, I'm like, that was nothing. So. Go ahead, Mary Ellen, you got something to say?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. You know, I've been working on a package for a little while now, and I'm starting to work with a few other council people. I think $15,000 is certainly not enough, but it's a start. In the very beginning, we were told, well, you know, we thought about it, but there was nothing we could do. I think it could save some of our mom and pop businesses for a month or two, even if we are able to give them money to pay their rent. So, for example, you know, Director Lieber was very proud of the fact that a North Olmsted resident donated masks to the service or to the senior center, right? Well, that was great, except for that the lady had closed her business in North Olmsted in favor of keeping her 2 locations open on Mayfield Road and in Middleburg Heights, but yet closed North Olmsted but gave us masks, right? Well, maybe we could have done something to help her ease that burden until we see some new other packages coming from, you know, the new administration that is coming in January. I think that even if we get a holdover on some of our mom and pop places for a month or two to help with payroll or to help with their rent, yeah, I think it could be a big help, and that's a starting point. Obviously, if we look at other items in the budget and, you know, we start to swap out a bigger item for a smaller item, and then we have some money left from that, we can start to accumulate a much larger fund toward helping them for at least, you know, 3 or 4 months, perhaps. And no, I'm not talking about the large chain restaurants or any of those big restaurants, Mr. Schuman. You know, we've got to support our smaller businesses. Crazily matter of fact, I went to the Disney store, bought a whole bunch of stuff there, actually paid the UPS guy over on, you know, Country Club Boulevard there, Great Northern Boulevard, to ship it. I could have got free shipping online at Disney, but people don't do that. Okay, I will, I'm willing, and I think that we have to look for money in our budget to help some of these folks, or we're going to lose them and they won't come back. Thank you.
Carrie?
I know that I sent the initial response regarding council's changes or requests that, you know, you're talking about these larger items and you're talking about the jet vac and the you had asked some questions about the ambulance and stuff. Those are all paid for out of special funds that are only for those specific purposes. So taking these big ticket items is not going to assist dramatically in the help of creating a business loan fund or grant fund or whatever. So that's where I just want to make clear that if that's your motivation, that there's some difficulty doing that. And I know Mr. Glassburn had said, well, could we charge salaries and benefits of the street crew or storm crew to the permanent improvement fund? And and that is no, unless they are working on a permanent improvement project, and that time and benefits need to be calculated very exactly to be able to capitalize those costs. So I just want to make sure that some people who might not be familiar with fund accounting understand that. So I apologize for adding.
Mr. Glassburn, you want to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was glad to hear that the patio that President Jones had mentioned was in the budget. I too had heard it as a request and not a inclusion. in the way it was presented, but I'm glad that it's there. As to the discretionary amount, I still would be supportive of adding additional funds for the same reason that I've talked about with the businesses. I think it's still, the people at the Ox Cart, they may have not asked for this, but they're the people that are going to be interacting with our residents as they come in need. The more that we can give them the flexibility to do their jobs and to have, extra funding available for if there's a specific unique need, it just seems like the time to do that kind of a thing. And I'm glad that President Jones brought it up. I didn't think of it, but I will get to the aggregate amount without, I'll come back to the aggregate amount in just a moment. But if we did not include the jetback truck as an offset to any of this and just other items that have been discussed, we're talking about in the ballpark of $90,000 to $100,000 for all items that are on this list on a budget that's $70 million. We're talking about less than 0.5% of the budget here. So I'm very supportive of us going $1 in and $1 out, but not to the extreme extent. So I'm sorry, Director Kopfer, or someone else want to jump in before I move on to another item?
Director Lieber has her hand up.
And I just wanted to chime in on the discretionary, and Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong, but those funds are budgeted out of our grant and endowment fund, which is a separate fund that's supported by donations, et cetera. And we have a fairly healthy fund balance. Division Head Allegra felt that what the current allocation should meet their needs. But if it doesn't, there's nothing that stops us from, in a transfer ordinance, appropriating more of the existing fund balance. So I just wouldn't want council to take away from the general fund when there is a fund balance in grant and endowment that is there to support the needs of residents. So I do think that there is flexibility to add should we get midway through the year and find there's greater need. We can bring an appropriation to increase from our fund balance in grant and endowment.
Are you seeing any need to do that now?
I don't believe Ms. Allegra thought that that was necessary to start the year, and I guess we'll see how things go, but she said that's a seldom used line item, that we have it there for if we need it, but that it typically doesn't get tapped very frequently. So we didn't expect a rush, in the first quarter or half of the year, and if we did find that needs were rising, we would then come back to council with a transfer from the grant and endowment fund into that line item.
What kind of money is in the grant and endowment fund right now?
Is there like 100,000 or so, Carrie? I know it's not all just youth and family services, but there's significant funds. I could work with Ms. Kopfer to find you that number, but it would be more than double. It would be more than the $5,000 or $6,000 that was going to be added to this budget.
So if Chris Allegra had a need and came to you, you could come to us, and that wouldn't be a problem at all.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you for your thoughts and of our residents, though. It's appreciated.
Go ahead, Chris. Let's keep going.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the separation pay and casualty loss, those were a couple of mine. I still would feel a lot more comfortable if we were allocating funds in those balances, but unless we are transferring from budget stabilization or something along those lines, if we can't redirect any of these larger equipment purchases, there's just not that kind of money available. So I will move on from those.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Karen.
Mr. Glassburn, can I address that one specific issue? Because the separation pay fund, not the casualty loss fund, but the separation pay fund and the 27th pay fund are going to be funded at the level of last year, or not last year, what it was budgeted for originally last year. And I don't know that I did. We had always intended to fund them to some extent, and I was going to involve the healthcare fund, the hospitalization fund, because that fund balance has grown over the years, and it's had a longer time to grow too, actually. And so I was waiting on our open enrollment, which just ended, to recalculate our healthcare expense at the beginning of the year, and then determine if we don't direct those monies, the city's share of the monies, into that fund, then we can redirect what we need to fund the other benefit related reserves, which is separation pay and 27th pay. So that's where it's, I believe it's $486,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Keith. Is that just the general fund, or is that in total?
I think that's just the general fund.
Madam Director, you're muted.
You're turned off again, Carrie.
So every fund that has wages and benefits is reduced by their correlating expenditures, and so that they can fund the separation pay and the 27th pay fund.
So we are going to fund separation pay with the same, what we would have budgeted, what we did have originally budgeted for 2020. And we're going to do the same thing with the 27th pay.
Right, and it was always our intention to work toward that, but I would have preferred to wait until we get the ending balance, fund balances, see what what we end at, and also resolve what healthcare, because at the time the budget was based on estimates. So there'll probably be some more shifting with healthcare as a lot of people have changed their plans to the HSA plan. So we'll be looking at that in January, and then I'll probably be on one of the first transfer amendments that we do. But I feel confident, and I know that we talked as directors, and also I talked to Ms. Gallo, and we feel that the healthcare fund is sufficient to, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of money still transferred in there, but that it will be sustainable, and we will be fine. And then that way we can take it, and it's like benefit for benefit. So I felt like that was a good use of those funds.
Mr. Limpert, you were the one that originally brought this to our attention. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was actually working with Mrs. Kopfer on that proposal to fully fund, and she presented a couple options. One of them, Ms. Kopfer, I believe the fireworks isn't really in the budget anymore, correct?
The fireworks expense, the expense for fireworks is in the budget, but the event, the boom event, is not budgeted for.
Okay. Was there any reason why we kept the firework expense? Because I thought we pretty much expected we wouldn't be able to hold it this year.
That was just what. That was
Mr.
just
Mayor,
what.
do you want to talk about that at all?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, when we went through the budget and we were talking about the expenses for fireworks, and I must have missed that line item was still in there. My impression was that we weren't going to have the fireworks based on COVID, et cetera, and that basically all of those event funds were removed. But it sounds like the supporting funds were removed, but we still have the fireworks expense in the budget.
Well, the actual fireworks is still in the budget now. If we can't have it, we won't, obviously, and it'll be a decision of council whether you fund the event. So if we don't fund the event, we won't have the fireworks. So.
But right now in the budget, we don't have the supporting infrastructure for the in there,
which is a lot of overtime for our police and fire, and just a lot of and service.
Were you,
And
Mr. Mayor, were you envisioning having this event and just like people sitting in their cars or something, or installing?
It's something we could discuss. I mean, really, let's see how it goes, and we'll discuss it. If people don't want to have it, that's fine. If people want to have it, that's fine. If people want to have full production, that's fine too. So I don't really have skin in the game, so to speak. I'd love to see it go off and have the normal fireworks, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Love to see a lot of things. Thanks. Okay.
So Matt, Mr. Chair, I guess
Go ahead.
my thought would be that Ms. Coffer has come a long way to fund that, with the exception, there's still a gap, and perhaps in the funding process that we could look at if we do not have that event, which we're either going to have to fund additional resources to have that event, or if we don't have that event, that could potentially be earmarked for the closure of the 27th pay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
the 27th pay was part of the funding through the healthcare. If the 27th pay and the separation pay, both of those were funded via reducing the city's portion of the contribution to the healthcare.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed that, Ms. Coffer. Thank you.
Yeah, so those are taken care of. I know, it's a lot to take in. I apologize. It's more difficult doing it virtually. So, and I think that the thinking was for keeping the fireworks in is that maybe we don't have the boom event where everybody's gathered and we have DJs and balloons and games and all that, because social distancing is still a thing. But it doesn't mean you can't sit and watch fireworks. And so I think that was the thinking of that you could still shoot off fireworks and not have the event, and it still might be something that people seem to really enjoy the fireworks. So that was the thinking as to why at least let's keep the fireworks in for now, because we could do that without the big event, because there are a lot of people who sat in their front yard, who sat along Springvale, who sat in the RTA parking lot, and that wasn't part of the event, but they still thoroughly enjoyed the fireworks. So that was the thinking.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, just my thought on that is that, there's still going to be some level of service and safety over time to support that event, even if it is, all people in their vehicles and something. But no, I didn't mean to divert into the fireworks. It's just trying to understand, I was under the impression that everything was canceled from our budget hearing. So thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. Chris, you want to keep going?
Ms. Heeman has her hand up.
I apologize. Marielle?
Thank you. I would be with Mr. Limpert with regard to the fireworks. Fireworks were always something that was a statement that it brought business to the city, et cetera, et cetera. So it will require additional resources and funding. And it's not really something that is specific only to our residents. We get a lot of outside folks that have to be managed through traffic control and, fire safety. So I would think that those are funds that, could be somewhere else if council was willing to do that. Thank you.
I think I was really disappointed that we weren't able to do it, obviously, but I would also say that it seems to me that other communities managed to have fireworks in 2020, and we didn't. So, I'd love to see us bring it back, and even if it was in a muted way, or and it does bring a lot of attention to the city. It's also a boon for some of the businesses. It has been in the past. Go ahead, Mr. Glassburn. Let's get back to your. I think we're running out of time here. So.
Yes, we're almost done, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your indulgence. The next one was Councilwoman Williamson's idea. I'll try to speak for her as dangerous as that idea is. The cemeteries with the headstones. I believe for her, she was looking at it as a gesture and as a start on making that effort ongoing. I don't think there was a specific knowledge of, this much is, of how much it costs to do that one way or another. So, but I think she felt it was important that we had it on at some level of priority. And so, as to,
Mr. Glassberg,
go ahead. Yes.
Real quick on that, one of the, we actually had a primer on that at Landmarks years ago, and I think some of our members actually attended a workshop. And one of the things I took away from that was that you don't want somebody who doesn't know what they're doing to touch a headstone, because they can do more harm than good. We already do have within service, there's some money set aside to make sure the grass is cut and the gravel is put in the driveways. But it's what I took away from that primer was that the worst thing you can do is touch those headstones, and you're almost better off just letting a cemetery age. Do you remember that, Kim? Is that the way you remember it? I'd love to see them restored to a certain degree, but you don't want to put a new headstone in for somebody that died in the 1870s. It just wouldn't be appropriate. It's not. Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just maybe talk with the councilwoman and better understand what her objectives were, and there might be ways we can accommodate. There might be some other cemetery improvements we can look at, but I think to understand the issue that's trying to be addressed would be the first step for me to know what that money might be allocated for. So I think we can speak with her and also with the Landmarks Commission about what is most appropriate.
Okay, Mary Ellen, you got something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think, just to give a little clarity to what her thoughts might have been, I don't think she was looking at restoration. I think that there are a number that are toppled and that sort of thing. So that might have been more the expectation, but yes, certainly she will clarify that for you, because I do understand, Mr. Schuman, that restoration is a very specific process and you can do more damage to them. So I think she was kind of thinking of that there are some that have fallen over, there was some vandalism, that sort of thing. Thank you.
I mean, you got to understand though that even those toppled ones are not supposed to be touched, again, unless you have somebody with some serious expertise. You go into a lot of old cemeteries and you'll find that they'll lay the headstones at the head of the grave rather than trying to mount them again. And it's you come into a cemetery and it's upsetting to see a toppled headstone, but the reality is that is something in the process of a maturing of a cemetery. So, and again, I'm no expert on this. I only know what I learned, through the members of Landmarks that took the class and then reported back to us on it. I'm sure that's something we can get more information on. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Let's try to wrap this up. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So on the outside counsel for council, the intention was for that to remain in the law director's line item, not to put that in council's, recognizing that is a prerogative. But we've seen more issues come up in the last couple of years than I think have been in the past, and was trying to recognize that fact. On the question of redistricting, I'll just state for myself once again that I'm happy to donate that service and certainly would rather see that money spent on something more worthwhile. And the last comment, unless there's other responses
Chris,
on the yes.
About that, Chris, I for one would be really uncomfortable if a member of council were to take it upon himself to do the redistricting. I mean, I know we vote on it and everything, but that makes me really uncomfortable. And I think there could be some concern there. Nothing personal, love you dearly, but I'm just saying, wouldn't want anybody to be doing it. I wouldn't want to have to do it. I wouldn't want to, I think you open yourself up to a lot of potential claim against yourself. Go ahead, wrap it up.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, on that point, without belaboring it, there's two different sources of the expense. There's the software and hardware and the data to do it, and then there's the decision making of drawing maps. the overwhelming amount of the cost is in the first bucket. So to alleviate that, I think is what I'm suggesting. On the 27th pay, just wanted to note that we were glad, or I was glad, and others expressed that they were glad when they learned to see that that was now in the amendment from the administration. And that is it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And I really do appreciate the energy you put into everything you do. You drive me a little crazy, but I do appreciate the energy. So at this time, I'd like to move the budget forward. I don't know how committee feels about it. I think if there are specific amendments, this will be second reading tonight, correct? Nicole, is that correct? This will be second reading tonight. If we move forward to be second reading tonight, amendments can be offered after the fact, right? And a lot of these things can be discussed. Certainly, these major purchases will be discussed. This, again, is a temporary budget, so these things will be discussed in the near future, some of them sooner than later. Mr. Broussard, how do you feel about that, moving this forward and moving it out of committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with you. We tackled a lot this evening, and some of the other items is, at the risk of being redundant, will be discussed at greater length during possibly separate pieces of legislation. So I'd be in favor of moving it forward.
So, Mr. Kelly, any comments?
I'm not sure that we're there yet. But even if I'm against it, it would still go ahead 2-1 anyhow, I believe, right? So I think I would have to vote no at this point.
Well, you're still entitled to an opinion if you want to share it. I mean, you're glad to hear it, so.
I'm just simply going to vote on moving it forward, that's all.
Thank you. So Carrie has made, Director Copper has made some amendments to the legislation, which we have in our hands. So I'm going to make a motion that we move the budget forward with the finance director's amendments and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Kelly?
Nay.
So it passes committee 2-0, or 2-1, I'm sorry. Sorry, Pat, I didn't mean to call you a 0. That's totally inappropriate. So it passes committee 2-1, recommended to full council as amended. And I thank you very much, everybody. It's been a lot of work. Again, if somebody wants to bring up amendments, certainly they have to be balanced, correct? And then all the other stuff that we're, like, again, we're going to be talking about this in the very near future. So keep that in mind. Thank you. I guess that concludes my meeting at 8:06. Thank you.
I'd like to call the caucus meeting of December 15th, 2022